There's a particular kind of stillness some people can't tolerate. Not boredom, guilt. Sit them down on a Sunday with nothing to do, and within 10 minutes, something in their chest starts pulling tight, whispering that they should be doing something else. Anything else. Resting starts to feel less like relief and more like a debt quietly accumulating interest. You might know this feeling. A free afternoon arrives, and instead of enjoying it, you fill it with errands, with chores, with anything that lets you call the time productive, instead of just letting it be yours. Even lying down on the couch can come with a small, nagging voice keeping score, reminding you of everything you should be doing instead. It can look like ambition, like discipline even, someone who simply doesn't waste time, but underneath it is usually something else, a quiet, long-held belief that your worth has to be earned hour by hour and rest doesn't pay any of it down. Picture someone home alone on a Saturday afternoon, finally with nothing scheduled. No plans, no obligations, an entire empty stretch of hours ahead of them. They sit down on the couch with a book they've been wanting to read for weeks. 12 minutes in, they're still on the same page. Not because the book is boring, because some other part of their mind has quietly taken over, running a list. The laundry that's been sitting in the dryer since Thursday, an email they haven't answered, the garage they've been meaning to organize for months. None of it is urgent. None of it has to happen today. But the list keeps running anyway, louder than the words on the page. They close the book. Stand up. Tell themselves they'll just throw the laundry in real quick and they'll come right back to reading. They don't come back. By 6 o'clock, the laundry's done, the email's answered, 2 drawers in the garage are reorganized, and the book is exactly where they left it, spine still creased to page 11, the one quiet hour they actually had to themselves spent instead on everything except themselves. Guilt around resting rarely starts with rest itself. It usually starts with what rest used to mean, or wasn't allowed to mean, somewhere much earlier. For some, it began in a home where worth was tied tightly to output, where praise showed up after good grades, finished chores, accomplishments, but rarely just for existing quietly in a room. Children raised this way learn early and thoroughly that being valued requires being useful. Rest in that equation doesn't produce anything. So some part of them keeps treating it as a kind of risk, a gap where their usefulness, and therefore their worth, briefly goes unproven. For others, it grew out of genuine scarcity, a household where there genuinely wasn't time to rest, where every hour really did need to go toward survival, toward keeping things afloat. The habit that kept the family going back then doesn't always know the emergency has passed. It keeps running the same urgent program in a present that no longer requires it. There's a quieter version too. People who learned somewhere along the way that slowing down meant someone else would have to pick up the slack, and watching someone else struggle because they stopped to rest felt like an unbearable kind of guilt all its own. So resting stopped feeling like self-care. It started feeling like quietly making things harder for somebody else. Picture someone homesick, genuinely unwell. Fever, body aching, the kind of sick that has no business being anything but a day spent in bed. And yet, propped up against 2 pillows, laptop balanced on their knees, they're answering emails. Not because anyone asked them to. Their manager actually told them explicitly, "Take the day, we've got it covered." But here they are anyway, typing slowly between waves of fatigue, because the thought of an entire empty inbox day stretching ahead of them feels somehow worse than the fever itself. By early afternoon, exhausted in a way that has nothing left to do with the illness, they finally close the laptop. They don't feel relieved. They feel guilty. For the 3 hours they did spend resting, the ones they didn't fill, the gap in the middle of the afternoon where they actually just slept. Even their sick day has to be earned, apparently, in installments. This pattern rarely looks dramatic from the outside. Often it just looks like someone who's simply always on the go, admired even, for how much they get done. It looks like multitasking during rest itself. Never just watching a show, but folding laundry while watching it, scrolling a phone while watching it, never letting the rest be the only thing happening. It looks like a quiet discomfort that shows up the moment a to-do list empties out, a kind of restlessness that sends them hunting for one more task just so the list isn't fully blank. It looks like vacations spent half working, checking email just in case, bringing a laptop just to stay on top of things, never fully arriving anywhere because some part of them never agreed to actually leave the job behind. It looks like saying, I should really be doing something out loud, almost involuntarily, during the exact moments meant to be unwinding. A sentence that interrupts rest before rest has even had a chance to begin. And it can look like exhaustion that doesn't make sense on paper. Someone who's doing everything right, staying busy, staying productive, and still feels depleted in a way busyness was supposed to prevent. Because the body, unlike the to-do list, was never actually getting what it needed. Here's the quiet cost of never letting yourself rest without guilt. The body eventually stops asking nicely. Picture someone years into this pattern. Tension headaches that show up most afternoons, a back that's been tight for months, sleep that never quite feels like enough no matter how many hours it technically adds up to. None of it is dramatic enough on its own to stop them, so it doesn't. It just accumulates quietly, the way unpaid bills accumulate, until eventually the body sends a notice loud enough that it can't be worked around. An illness that lingers longer than it should, a sudden and total inability to get out of bed, a breakdown that looks sudden from the outside but was actually years in the making. There's a cost to relationships too. People who can't rest without guilt often struggle to be fully present even when they're physically there. Half in the conversation, half running an internal list of everything else waiting. Partners and friends can end up feeling like they're competing with an invisible to-do list for attention, one that never seems to lose. And there's a deeper cost, harder to name, a life that gets measured almost entirely in output, where joy, stillness, and simple presence start to feel unjustifiable unless they're earned first. Somewhere in that equation, the actual point of rest, recovery, presence, just being a person instead of a function, gets lost underneath the constant need to prove it was deserved. The goal isn't to abandon ambition or stop caring about getting things done. Drive isn't the problem here. The real goal is narrower, learning to let rest exist on its own terms, without needing to be earned first or justified afterward. It starts with a small private reframe. Rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's part of what makes productivity sustainable at all. A body and mind that never stop running eventually can't run as well as one that's allowed to recover. Picture trying it once, in a low-stakes version of that same Saturday afternoon. The list starts running again. Laundry, email, the garage. And instead of standing up to chase it, picture staying seated, opening the book back to page 11 and reading one more page. Just one. Letting the list wait, fully intact, exactly where it was. Notice what happens. The world doesn't fall apart. The laundry is still there tomorrow, completely unbothered by the delay. And somewhere in that quiet, uneventful hour is proof that rest was never actually the dangerous gap it felt like. It was just a need that had been waiting a long time to be allowed. And maybe the most important thing to understand is this. Feeling guilty for resting was never proof that you were lazy. It was proof that somewhere along the way, you learned your worth had to be purchased, hour by hour, with output. You don't have to keep paying for the right to exist quietly. Rest was never something you had to earn.